Before you lies a beast armored in scarlet scales, fangs dripping with saliva and fire as it rears up on 4 legs. Its wings outstretched blot out the sun.
Like that?
Dude, that is not cool. That's metagaming.
Okay. Let's talk about D&D Buzzwords. Metagaming. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and as usual, joining me here is this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Maybe it's your first time visiting Ted's basement. It's a place where we like to discuss news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Hey, sometimes we even talk about other role-playing games.
So if you don't want to miss a single video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and attune to that notification bell.
Alright, some of our big-time buzzwords for Dungeons & Dragons are things like metagaming, power gaming, role-playing. There's a bunch of different ones, but today we're going to talk about metagaming. And you know what, Ted, why don't you just pick up the sheet and read what it says for what is metagaming.
Alright, from Wikipedia, the metagame, or game about the game, is an approach to a game that transcends or operates outside of the prescribed rules of the game, uses external factors to affect the game, or goes beyond the supposed limits or environment set by the game. And really, the thing that we're going to plug in on for D&D is uses external factors to affect the game. So essentially, you know, what that pairs down to, as we saw in the intro, is Dave, as the player, was reading the monster manual while I was using a description so that he supposedly now knows what it is that he's up against, and that affects the game. Now, veteran gamers, they've got the ability, without using the monster manual, metagame, because they just know, they've been around the block. So it's difficult at times.
And I would add to that, novices sometimes just unknowingly make the mistake not realizing they're breaching etiquette by grabbing the book to see what the monster is. Like, I have a book, why can't I just look at it? But we're going to get into all that and how it interacts and the interactiveness of these mechanics and basically relationships at the table. But first, we have to talk about something else, and that is ultra interactive role-playing game maps.
Now on Kickstarter is an awesome map tool for use at your gaming table. Whether you're using a virtual tabletop or whether you're using like an LCD screen as your battle map, you can plug in these maps and you can get in on this Kickstarter and just get 2 maps for, a low cost, where you could go all the way in, variety of pledge levels, but all the way at the top for over 200 maps. The things on these things are awesome. Just the intro video is enough for, in my opinion, to sell the sizzle. You can add lighting effects. You can add spell effects. Your lighting effects can have a source and you can rotate which way you want it to go. You want your monsters to literally walk in on the screen, it can happen. You want to have an effect that comes and then goes, you can plug that in and make it disappear. It is just amazing.
Weather, rain, snow, after all that, I actually don't know what to say. You've said it all. But there's definitely a lot of things, strange effects, all of that can be incorporated, the lighting stuff. It's really going to help set the mood and ambiance if you're playing on a screen. It's a great way to go. It's digital, it's easy. The DM just pushes a quick button, buttons, and it just is going to happen. It's not like, when you have a bunch of physical terrain and you have to set it all up. The DM's just mousing around and quickly going from scene to scene. In some ways, it's more immersive because, you don't have to set things up or bring things out. It's all just like there, within seconds.
You click the button and poof, you put it out the entire terrain worth of stuff, bad guys included, and you can then just put your mini right on top of the screen. It doesn't even require internet. You can just plug your monitor, your screen into a router, and you're good to go from there. So I don't know what else to say, but go down to the description below. Help us out by helping out the sponsors and check out that Kickstarter.
It's fantastic. Even if you don't think this is something you would use at your table, it's definitely worth looking at it just for the cool factor. You can go over there, you can, maybe you pledge, maybe you don't, but it's definitely something you want to take a look at. So with that, let's jump back to metagaming.
So, all right, now this is something that, you brought up that novice gamers might do it without even thinking about it. My son, who's 11 years old, he's got like 2 years-ish in, playing tabletop role-playing games, and he has a a thirst for knowledge. He enjoys reading, he enjoys getting into it. So there's times that I'll be talking about stuff and he'll want to pull out the monster manual and read it, and then he just doesn't understand that if they wind up encountering that creature, that his character just does not have that knowledge. So, like, I can definitely understand the novice side of things, but, you know, we've seen veteran gamers do it as well.
Yeah, they cheat. All right, so we're going to break this discussion down into two different categories. You know, ways you shouldn't metagame and kind of ways you should metagame.
Well, I wouldn't say, you know, ways that you shouldn't, but, like, the reasons why you shouldn't metagame, I think is a better way to clarify that.
Right, but then you shouldn't do it even after you know that you shouldn't do it. So good examples are, like we've seen, right, and you mentioned your son, is the idea of someone physically grabbing the book to look at the stats, the game mechanics, and break immersion of the role-playing part of an RPG with the game mechanics to figure out, to win, to have information that their character wouldn't have.
So what that winds up doing is it winds up changing the encounter. You can ruin the surprise. You can, you know, change the difficulty level. If I look at a stat block that I'm not familiar with while Dave is running a game, and oh, I now know that this creature has resistance to a damage type that I would use frequently, or let's face it, a vulnerability towards something that I might not think to use, I now am armed with this knowledge that is going to change the challenge level of that encounter, and that really breaks what a DM might be trying to do.
Right, and if trolls in your world are rare, why would the folk hero, farmer turned hero, who's, you know, never encountered one, know to use fire and acid, right? It really just doesn't make any sense.
It also, when you begin thrusting this knowledge that you don't have into the combat, by taking away the challenge, you're taking away the threat, and therefore you can turn something that should have been a hard encounter potentially into an easy or a cakewalk of an encounter, and that actually winds up being a little bit boring for the story because you didn't overcome something. You know, as you said, you cheated. You got your way through. Now, if you are a novice player and you don't read a book and you happen to use the right thing by happenstance, awesome. That adds to the story, and
that's exciting, right?
Yeah. You know, it's like, I didn't realize that. Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, so, and they learn something, so it adds excitement to the game or takes away. But not only is the problem like, oh, you're going to make it less challenging, hence maybe boring, but the other problem is you're also robbing the other players at the table of that discovery, the exploration part of the game, the figuring things out by doing that. And all in all, it's just bad. It's just poor etiquette.
Yeah, if you come across, you know, a puzzle and the DM throws out, you know, a riddle, and he didn't do, you know, a lot of research, didn't find out that, you know, everyone at the table has already read Lord of the Rings or, you know, The Hobbit, and they grabs a riddle from there, and you're like, oh, what's this? What if you're playing a character that's got that 9 or 8 intelligence, and you're like, yeah, I really would have no reason to figure that out, but you as the player know it. Hold your tongue and let the other characters try to figure it out, and allow things to evolve naturally. Just because you have the answer doesn't mean that you should push it out there.
Absolutely. So let's also talk about now ways to use metagaming, right? So actually the example you kind of used, the puzzle one, I think there's a great way to metagame in there where, say you're playing the game and the wizard has a super high intelligence, but no one can figure out the puzzle. And you're at the table and you're like, all right, give me whatever check. And they roll it really well. And they have the high score to go along with it. So as the DM, I might be like, all right, you get 30 seconds with your phone to do a Google search, right? And then, you know, I'll time it, and then you put your phone down, and, you know, whatever information you gain from that, you know, maybe it'll help. Or maybe I'll give you a clue. Like, that would be some examples where we can kind of bring in a little bit of metagaming that can help, you know, facilitate the game and cover areas that the game doesn't really cover very well.
Another way to metagame is to go in the opposite direction. If you are a veteran player and you know, like let's suppose we're using the old troll rules that if you cut limbs off and what have you, that it grows new trolls or what have you, you could be like, oh, I totally want to hack this thing apart. You can make the encounter more challenging because you're doing something that you know is not going to be effective, and it adds to the fun of it. And I know you've done that in my games several times, and like there's times that I look at you and I'm like, really? And you're like, oh yeah. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Absolutely. When I was playing a low intelligence barbarian, I was attacked by an ooze. It hurt me, so I'm going to hurt it back. That character fights barehanded. So not a great method against oozes. He also likes to grapple a lot. Also not great against oozes. Same character went into a chamber with brown mold, was making him cold. So he figured if he was cold, the best thing to do was to get warm and use fire.
Of course,
Of course.
It's a great plan.
Which didn't work out so great. But the point is, like, my character doesn't know that. I know that because I'm a player and I've played this game for a long time and know all the rules. When I role play my characters, I usually decide they have a certain kind or line of logic that they'll use, and I stick to it, even if it's detrimental. You know, as long as everyone's having fun at the table.
You know, I know that there are a lot of players out there who, you know, have kind of either done this on their own or heard us talking about it, and that's the idea of like a go-to action. And there are times that your go-to action is not going to work. Oh, I punch it. I cast Firebolt. What have you. Against certain things, these are bad ideas. But if you honestly are unsure and your go-to action is going to be detrimental to the party, it's still sometimes humorous to put it out there. And I have to tell you, regardless of the consequences of the campaign, those stories where you purposefully did something detrimental to the party, they're going to be things that you will talk about for years. And no one's going to care that, oh, well, you cast a spell that was really effective against this creature and you made the encounter easy.
Well, that's the thing too, right? And the real difference is it's you, the player, making things more interesting and more difficult because the character doesn't know, right? You're purposely choosing to use that metagaming knowledge the way your character would operate in the world as they understand it. Now, going forward, yeah, you're being a dick if you continuously do that over and over, because your character, no matter how low their intelligence is, they probably learn from their mistakes at some point. Like, oh, I've seen this brown moldy stuff before. It reacts really badly to fire. I'm not going to do that. You know, my Jogo Barbarian is not going to punch oozes anymore. That was a bad idea.
But that initial encounter, you know, when you see it for the first time, that character doesn't know, and you're gonna have, you know, the path of logic. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that initial encounter, not, oh, okay, I'm going on a long campaign against oozes, I'm going to punch it every single time. No, that doesn't make sense. That's not adding to the story. That's just you making, you know, a bad decision for the party because you're gonna require more healing, or you're gonna get dropped and requiring even more healing.
Now, we understand that separating player knowledge from character knowledge can be one of the hardest parts of the game, but I find it really rewarding when you can do that effectively, whether it's using that metagame knowledge to make things more interesting at the table, or just not using it at all, and, you know, possibly like ruining the fun for other people at the table too. And that's what you don't want to do. Not for your fellow players and not for your GM. You know, as the GM, if your players are constantly looking up everything that you put at them and metagaming, like you that could lead to frustration, and your GM just not being like, I don't know what, you guys run yourself. Apparently you don't need me. You know, you have your books. I'm not doing this anymore.
And that's the last thing you want to have happen.
Yeah, well, everyone at the table needs to be having fun, right? Including the GM. So these are just some considerations, but let us know some of your metagaming stories. What faux pas have you made? What are your pet peeves? We got a place where we can discuss it down in the comments below. Before we leave, let us invite you to join our adventuring party over on Patreon. Ted, what can they expect to find over there?
We're creating products for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that players and DMs alike can drop right into their game.
But that's not all. We do monthly giveaways, and our patrons are automatically entered.
We're also doing weekly hangouts with our patrons and more.
So quest on down to the description, join the Nerdarchy adventuring party, and until next time,
stay nerdy.